Viking shipbuilders on a calm fjord. The fjord was still that morning. The water lay like a sheet of polished steel, broken only by the ripples of a drifting gull and the faint echo of waves touching the stone shoreline. Mist curled like breath from the mountainsides, rolling gently over pine forests and falling into the valley where the settlement stood. It was here, at the edge of this calm water, that the shipbuilders of the village gathered. Men, women, and even children stood watching, because this was no ordinary day. Today, the keel of a new ship would be set, a ship destined, perhaps, to carry their kin across seas unknown. The master builder. At the center of the gathering stood Halvard the shipwright. His beard was long, streaked with gray, and his hands bore scars from decades of carving, shaping and binding wood. His father had built ships before him, and his father's father before that. In Halvard's eyes, every plank of oak held memory, and every nail carried the weight of generations. "Bring the timber forward," Halvard commanded, his voice steady, but carrying a fire that stirred the crowd. Young men rolled the oak logs, harvested weeks before from the forest slopes. Each tree had been chosen with care, blessed by the village seer, and felled with ritual chants to honor the spirits of wood and water. For the Norse believed that a ship was not merely wood and iron, but a living being, a vessel with a soul. The ritual of beginning, before the first strike of axe or saw. The seer, a woman named Astrid, stepped forward, draped in a cloak of raven feathers. She carried a bowl of mead and a sprig of juniper. She walked to the water's edge, dipping the sprig and flicking droplets over the logs. Over Halvard, over the waiting crowd. May Fjord, god of the sea, watch over this craft. She intoned, "May the wind be fair, the waters kind, and may the spirit of the ship carry our people to fortune." The crowd murmured a prayer, then fell silent as Halvard lifted his axe. With a single strike, he split the first log, the sound echoing across the fjord. The ship was begun, craft of the builders. The days that followed were filled with rhythm, the thud of mallets, the rasp of saws, the song of chisels biting into wood. Villagers gathered to watch as Halvard and his team worked. The keel, that long backbone of the ship, was shaped first, stretching like a serpent along the ground. Then came the ribs, rising like bones from a skeleton. One by one, planks were bent and fastened, their curves coaxed by fire and water, until the hull took shape. Children played nearby, carving tiny toy boats to float in the shallows, pretending to be explorers on distant seas. The women wove sails from wool, dyed with crimson and blue, their needles flashing in the sunlight. Even the old men, too frail for heavy labor, sat on stones and sharpened nails or polished or handles. This was not the work of one man, but of a whole community. For every ship built was not just a vessel, it was hope, livelihood, and survival. The calm before storms. Yet beneath the calm fjord and the laughter of children, there was an unspoken tension. News had reached the settlement of raids along the coast, other Viking bands, hungry for land and treasure, clashing with rival lords. Ships meant power. Ships meant the difference between being conquerors or the conquered. And though this fjord was peaceful, the world beyond was never still for long. Halvard knew this. Each night, when the workers rested, he stayed behind, running his hand over the unfinished planks, whispering to himself, "This one must endure storms. This one must carry sons home." His own son, Eirik, had turned 18 that spring. Strong, restless, his eyes burned with the desire to see the world beyond the fjord. He begged to join the voyages once the ship was done. Halvard, torn between pride and fear, gave no answer. Lessons by the fire. One evening, as the sky burned with the last embers of sunset, Eirik approached his father by the half-finished ship. "Why must we take so much care?" "Father," he asked, "other villages build ships faster. Some use lighter wood. Why spend weeks bending planks, when haste could have us on the sea sooner?" Halvard looked at his son, then at the calm water. He tossed a stone into the fjord, watching the ripples spread. "A ship is like a man, Eirik," he said quietly. "Build it with haste, and it will betray you when the waves rise. But build it with patience, and it will carry you through the fiercest storm. Remember that when you hold an oar in your hands, your life will rest on the craft we shape today." Eirik nodded, though impatience still flickered in his eyes. The launching. At last, after many weeks, the day of launching arrived. The hull gleamed with fresh tar, the dragon-headed prow carved with fierce detail, its eyes painted red to ward off sea spirits. The sail, stitched with runes of protection, hung ready to catch the wind. Villagers gathered once more at the fjord's edge, their voices hushed. The ship stood on wooden rollers, ready to kiss the water for the first time. Astrid, the seer, stepped forward again. She carried a bowl of blood, sacrificed from a goat, given to honor the gods. She sprinkled it over the prow, chanting words older than memory. Halvard raised his hands. "Push," he cried. Dozens of hands pressed against the hull. With groaning timbers and creaking rollers, the ship slid forward, faster, faster, until with a final rush it splashed into the fjord. The water embraced it, rocking it gently like a newborn child. A cheer erupted, echoing across the cliffs. A name and a destiny. Every ship required a name, for without one, it had no soul. Halvard turned to the crowd. "This ship," he declared, "shall be called Storm Raven. May she fly across the seas, swift and unyielding." Eirik was among the first to leap aboard, grabbing an oar and testing its weight. His grin was wide, his heart ready for adventure. Halvard watched, pride and worry warring within him. The fjord was calm that day, as though blessing the beginning of Storm Raven's journey. But Halvard knew, beyond the mountains, storms waited. The legacy of the fjord. That night, as the village feasted in celebration, old songs were sung of voyages past, of ships that carried warriors to glory, of ships that brought traders to far lands, of ships that never returned. The children listened with wide eyes, imagining their futures on the sea. The elders smiled knowingly, for they had seen the price of such dreams. And Halvard, seated by the fire with Astrid beside him, whispered a silent prayer that Storm Raven would not only bring riches and fame, but also return his son safely to the fjord's calm embrace. For though the sea was vast, though storms would rage, the heart of every voyage began here in the still waters, in the sound of axes and saws. In the love of a community that built more than ships, they built hope. And as the moon rose high, its silver light dancing on the calm fjord, the villagers knew this truth. As long as the shipbuilders worked, as long as their craft endured, their people would always find a way across the unknown waters of life.